Paradox of India is we have one of the lower median ages in the world with the second largest population in quantity over the age of 60. We have 150 million people, Swami, today who are over the age of 60 in India. By 2050, this will become 300 million people. Right? And by the way, these people are not dying. Right? The healthcare systems are making them live. So then now what do? We essentially, our initial purpose was that we are going to bring both the sides together, organizations and people. What we have realized in the 3 years of doing this, that there are way many more people who want to work, meaningful contribution, than there are organizations that want to leverage them. So we started with the idea, okay, we're going to do three things. We're going to help organizations leverage this talent pool. The second one was, I said, look, how can I create 1 million teachers, post-career professionals? Third is social impact organizations leveraging this segment. So it's free for people to come sign up on our platform. We call this group the wisdom generation. We say, look, it doesn't matter what age you are when you sign up.
Hello everyone. Welcome to another edition of Contra Minds. In this episode, I'm talking to somebody who is redefining workforce thinking and hiring frameworks. He's somebody who believes there's a new emerging workforce, post-career professionals. Post-career professionals are people who are over 50 and who have retired. He believes they bring in a huge amount of experience, expertise, and wisdom, which organizations of today must leverage and take advantage of. I am talking to Neeraj Sagar. Neeraj is the founder and CEO of Wisdom Circle. Neeraj is an engineer and an MBA, and he's worked with world's leading engineering organizations, consulting firms, and with one of the largest executive search firms, Egon Zehnder. Neeraj's wealth of experience across the globe in understanding strategy, workplace culture, hiring practices is something that he is put to use in building Wisdom Circle. I started my conversation with him on talking about human longevity because he's the global ambassador of the Stanford Center for Longevity. And he told me that how human longevity is creating a new opportunity, which is people who are living longer, and therefore we are creating a new emerging workforce, which is people who want to contribute after they retire. And this is something that organizations have not seen as an opportunity. I talked to him about the future of work, how work will change, how earning, working, and learning have to completely transform in this new emerging world. He talked to me about the importance of lifelong learning for people in their 30s and 40s because he believes what the workforce of the future will look like is really very different from how it is seen today. He believes work life is something that people have to really balance, and in the future, you will have long working lives, and therefore, you need to build expertise and excellence because as you move into your retirement, you will need to be a independent free agent and you would be giving your time to organizations, and that's when your expertise will be felt and you'll be able to really work and deliver for these organizations in their strategies, in their operations, and in their planning for the future. Neeraj shared with me his experience of building the organization, and he laced it with a lot of examples and anecdotes, which I thought was interesting and extremely valuable. Let's dive into my conversation with Neeraj. Today's episode is proudly brought to you by Effortless. Effortless is the ultimate solution for startups and SMBs seeking seamless money management and compliance handling. Effortless wasn't just created by anyone. It was crafted by chartered accountant turned entrepreneurs who understand the pulse of startups and SMBs. Visit www.goeffortless.ai and embark on a journey that will redefine the way you do business. So, Neeraj, one of the things I found with what you do today, you are also a global ambassador for the Stanford Center for Longevity,
Correct.
which is a very interesting uh, piece of work that you do, and that's also very closely related to the company that you run. And I wanted to really understand, what does Stanford Center of Longevity work on, and how is it relevant to today's work and career?
Again, I think you're asking questions which are making me think, Swami. So let me so let me start by why I joined Stanford Center on Longevity, right? And then I think I also realized that I have more simple answers to complicated questions. So maybe I'm not sure if that what your audience may like, but my simple answer is I joined Stanford on Longevity because I could, right? So someone recommended my name. They said, you guys are doing some of this cool work for the last 13 years. Neeraj is someone that you should consider as an ambassador because he is an ambassador already. It'll be and plus he's from Stanford, so that will be good. And so the reason so we are the second cohort of ambassadors for Stanford Center on Longevity. The first cohort was Stanford's way of saying, look, we've been doing some cool work, but we have no way of getting feedback back in. Because in a way, everything we are doing is us telling everybody what it should be. But at the end, the reality is it has to be implemented. The reality is that it has to have real world impact, not just theoretical stuff that we talk about. And so they now then came up with the second cohort. And the second cohort came by asking the first cohort, who would you like to recommend who's working in this space? So that's how I think 15 of us got picked. And we sort of showed up. The first time we all met was, we did some online stuff, but they have something called the Century Summit every year, which means, and again, it's linked to 100-year life. So that's why it's called Century Summit. And of course, you've talked about the new map of life, which is what they've come up with, which is the basis of what we do. But that's how we got in. Now, after we all got in, we realized now we got to do something also. But the cool thing about Stanford is they allow you to explore, find out, and do things together. So what has happened is, and then I'll answer your question specifically on work and life and all of that. But what has happened is, we've all got together, we've created small teams on different aspects. And now we are working on those aspects to bring it to the real world. As an example, so I am a part of what they call the workforce team. There are 7 or 8 of us, I think 8 of us on this team. We are all in different parts of the world. We bring our perspectives of what we are learning. We take what we can from what we've heard from Stanford and say, okay, now what does this mean? And honestly, the Stanford umbrella allows us more access, which allows us to come together and do things and then go back to organizations to say, look, this is what you should be doing, and this is how, if you do this, this fits in better with the new map of life. So for example, I'm a part of 2 work streams. One Tiger team is this workforce Tiger team, and for some reason I've gotten pulled into the media Tiger team, right? And is how we call it, where we are exploring how do we leverage media personalities to enhance or strengthen narratives for longevity.
Why longevity?
I think that's the theme, right? The Stanford Center on Longevity. But I think you asked a much more pertinent question, so which in a way links to why I started Wisdom Circle. So I'm actually now, because you asked this question on longevity, I'm now going to take a step back and then answer those questions around how I see work. And one of the things that I realized about 4 or 5 years ago was everyone I spoke to was talking about longevity, right? And so whenever you talk about aging, people are talking about how to live longer. So there's a lot of investment going on in science, there's a lot of investment going on in multiple areas on how do we make humans live longer. Not enough work was being done on what will you do if you live longer. And while you're doing that, in the middle comes AI. Now AI is saying you don't even, whatever you are doing, even that you don't need to do. Right? So now we have a double-edged sword, and literally people are saying universal basic income. Like, what will people do? How do you restructure humanity? At one level, Stanford is working on how do you get younger people ready to live. Like, what they're basically saying is any kid that is being born today has a very high likelihood of touching 100, right? Without much changes to, except, health and diet and, how you sort of take care of yourself, etc. But it's a very real problem that is going to face humanity. We are giving better healthcare, there's better medicines, there's better knowledge. AI is going to tell us what to do. We're all going to live longer. But then we'll be like, so let me define what that future looks like. We will be depressed, agers who the only thing we will be able to do is look at other agers and tell them what, I'm just saying, I can't even imagine, it's going to be crap, right? It's like you want to die, but nobody is letting you die, right? And you still have to live. Now the question is, kya karo, what, how much television, how much what? So, and then you start working backwards, which now let's answer your question about the role of, and I think, how did you define it? Work, learn and earn.
Correct.
And so where do you want to start?
So let's start with work, because the way organization look at workforce today, given longevity, there's going to be fundamental changes that they even need to rethink about employees and employability, right? So therefore, can you talk about that?
Okay. So, let me start with the extreme end. So you heard of DAOs, DAOs and all that, right? Distributed Autonomous Organizations. Okay. So you have that level of disparate way of working versus the traditional corporate way that exists today. My view is the current big organizations are going to struggle with readjusting. Because to change them is more difficult than starting a new company and having the new company do something differently. So I actually think, this is again my view, that we'll have, as time goes, we'll have newer companies and newer models come up than existing companies and existing models changing to adapt to this new way of working. And the example is like, when I go talk to people, and it's a simple example. When I talk to organizations to say, look, can you create roles for experts who want to work part-time? The current HR systems are so ingrained where to move one piece, you have to move 10 other pieces. Right? Our org chart doesn't have this. If someone comes, who will they report to? How will we pay them? How will we hand over if they only work 2 days and the other 3 days someone else works? So I think, it's like how India bypassed, landlines in a whole way to actually get to digital. Because, yes, we had landlines, yes, we had the weights, but, at the end, we still progressed much more on telecom than the US did, for example. So my view is, there will be a significant shift in newer age companies adapting to this new way of work, as opposed to current big companies changing it, right? So, and I can see that in my own startup, the way we work is very different from how I work in the traditional companies. We don't have any set time of coming in or leaving. There's a lot more flexibility on leave and when people come, when they work, what they do. I think we have rituals, right? So, for example, a Friday lunch ritual. Everybody shows up, right? So I actually think, organizations will become ritual based to bring people together, but at the same time adapting to what individuals need and how they want to work. So the role of HR shifts, the role of expertise shifts, the role of management shifts. Then you are now, and the good part is during COVID, we've actually seen a lot of this happen already. So the base has been set of what is possible. That you can get productive organizations without actually having people there. Now, of course, there are these questions around culture and this and that. And so, again, the change will be, and now let me approach it from an organization. Organizations are coming to us saying, look, we want 10% of our workforce as flexible workforce. I have had, and this is this is a $40 billion company that we are working with, which has told us in measuring terms, saying 10% of our staff, senior staff, should be on flexible payroll, which means they can work when they want, plus we can fire them when we want. Right? Because so this whole notion of, and again, so that is going to change. The other thing which we are already seeing, right, the ability of older people to continue working has increased and will continue to increase. There are many more people who are older or post-retirement who want to continue working than there are roles for those people today. So I think there is also that shift of desire to continue working. Now, whether the desire is for continuing to make money, and I have a view there as well, I actually think the desire is to stay relevant and be respected, right? And to stay relevant, which then, talks about learn, and we'll talk about that. But there will be pockets. I mean, right now, even in my friend circle, people are talking about, I wish I had taken, 10 years off when my kids were between 8 and 18. Right? Because that's the time I want to spend with them, because after 18 they'll go their way, I can then come back. So I think building in flexibility into work, women anyway do it, or rather sometimes are forced to do it by themselves or by the nature of society and how it's structured. But now I think it will become a lot more prevalent. However, it's not in the horizon. I mean, you see, we know it will happen, but it's not happening.
So I just want to pull back for a minute and talk about your startup Wisdom Circle, which I found very interesting. So talk to me about Wisdom Circle and what you do at Wisdom Circle, and then we will plug in what you're talking about. So I want to plug in the Stanford Center of Longevity along with the changing workplace that you spoke about. So talk about Wisdom Circle first, and then I'll probably plug in some of the points, and we will connect those points as we gather our thoughts.
Perfect. So let me tell you the genesis of Wisdom Circle. The genesis of Wisdom Circle was I stopped coloring my hair. Suddenly all my hair was white, and suddenly I realized that people started looking at me different. And I was in my early 40s then, right? I'm 54 right now. And that's when I realized there's something going on here. I was getting a lot more respect. Now there is, in the Western world, there is ageism. For me, it was working the other way. I'm getting my driver's license renewed in 15 minutes. I'm always getting a seat on the Indigo bus. I take the metro, someone older than me stands up for me and says, "Sir, please sit." And I'm thinking, and and even client, like I was in the client facing work, I would go to meet very senior people. Earlier, I would be made to wait outside with the reception available. Now I was ushered into the boardroom, given better cutlery to drink tea. And I was thinking, man, this is something wrong, right? Suddenly the white hair but then at the same time, people are like, oh, he's done. Like there were people older than me in my own company asking me how many more years I had to retirement. And I had 20 years for retirement left. I was 42 and retirement was at 62. And they're asking me, when are you retiring? And I was like, again, so that was the other side of it. So then that is what got me started on studying the subject. So during COVID, I read a lot about longevity and aging. I probably have about 60, 70 books on the subject. So that's how the journey started. Me trying to understand, what is going on, which I don't understand. Because most of us understand this as we get older. In my view, I started understanding it when I was I treated as old, but I didn't think I was old. So again, took a lot of courses, learned. Then what happened was, because now I started looking a little more wiser, a lot of senior people started approaching me to say, Neeraj, can you advise us what we should do if we retire? And that's when I realized that the problem was much, much bigger. And I think in the years that I was, there were probably hundreds of people I've spoken to who would say, Neeraj, you're retiring, don't know what to do. So I would ask them, do you have enough money? What do you want to do? And most people were lost, right? Because life was, life the way it was, pre-retirement was purpose enough for them. Bring up the kids, buy a house, become a CEO or become a CXO or become an expert. And suddenly, India still had 58 and then had become 60. And there's some companies still have 58 to say, okay, you're done. So that got me thinking again to say the world, we are all solving for younger people, but this massive demographic issue that is literally in this case on the horizon, that we are closing our eyes to say it's not my problem. When it is my problem, I will look. So that's the genesis of Wisdom Circle. And then when we started, we realized this is not an India problem. It was a global problem. The manifestation of it is very different. How it manifests in South Korea is different from how it manifests in Singapore, in the US, in Europe, in the UK, in Africa, in the Middle East. Because so there's, in some cases you have younger population, older, but India itself, the paradox of India is we have one of the lower median ages in the world with the second largest population in quantity over the age of 60. We have 150 million people, Swami, today who are over the age of 60 in India. By 2050, this will become 300 million people. Now, even if you take a sliver of that to say, oh, I'm only going to look at white collar, I'm only going to look at, people who are doing are working for someone, and I look at Provident Fund data and I come up with, even that is so big. Right? And by the way, these people are not dying. Right? The healthcare systems are making them live.
Yeah.
Right? So then now what do? We essentially, our initial purpose was that we are going to bring both the sides together, organizations and people. What we have realized in the 3 years of doing this, that there are way many more people who want to work, meaningful contribution, than there are organizations that want to leverage them. In a country like India, we worry about, will they take away younger people's jobs? So therefore, why should we, the old people have lived their life, let them be, let's focus on younger people. What they don't realize is there is so much wisdom, knowledge, experience, skills sitting with this group that is getting sidelined, that can be used for the betterment of economies, countries, intergenerational, upliftment. So we started with the idea, okay, we're going to do three things. We're going to help organizations leverage this talent pool. The second one was, I said, look, how can I create 1 million teachers out of retirees? By the way, the other word we've sort of now built, in many countries, they don't like the word retirees, so we've come up with post-career professionals. Don't ask me what it means, but I think it means something similar. But we're trying. I still say, because the word retirement means stop, but we're saying you have to continue working. So it's not, anyway, you get it right.
Yeah, perfect.
So the second is this. Third is social impact organizations leveraging this segment. So it's free for people to come sign up on our platform. We call this group the wisdom generation. We say, look, it doesn't matter what age you are when you sign up. So we don't restrict anybody, because we say, look, everyone's going to get old. So come sign now or come sign later, you can see. But we prefer people to be over 50, or at least in that second half of their biological age limit, if you look at a 0 to 100. And we help organizations tap into this pool for short duration and part-time opportunities. So that's what we do.
And in your platform today, how many people have registered themselves?
So as of this morning, we have 101,000 people.
My God.
And it's just not stopping. And we don't market ourselves too much. That's why I'm saying there's a huge gap, and we've only been able to list like 2,500 odd roles. So there is a 1:40 gap, right? I mean, for every 40 people who want to work, there's only one opportunity. Now, it's on us as well, but
Very brilliant. So therefore, clearly, there is this post-career professional looking for opportunities, and therefore that's one important trend that you are seeing. At the other end, you're talking about organizations wanting flexible workforce, and therefore at least the fact that they should change the way they hire.
Correct.
There needs to be a new way of thinking where what percentage is flexible. So can you talk about that, and how do you really connect and plug in this need?
So again, a very insightful question, Swami. This is the idealistic scenario, right? The idealistic scenario is organizations want to do this, people want to work. Here's the reality on the ground. The reality on the ground is change is difficult. Change is very, very difficult. The gig work economy. So in a way, what we are doing is we are doing gig work for seniors or more seasoned professionals. Gig work for younger people has finally been accepted, right? So if you want a UI UX designer, you want this, that, people will plug in and get these people. You'll go to the Upworks and Fiverrs of the world and you sort of find people and do it. But there is nothing that exists for this larger segment. People want to, but they don't know how to. So they default to what they know. Therefore, changing this. So if you go to any organization, and you tell them, look, I can get you this expert, and they know exactly what to do, but they will not come full time. They'll be like, oh, So the reaction is, so when the rubber hits the road, they'll be like, okay, I don't know what to do. So my view is it's going to take longer. So it needs a narrative change. It needs like we have, mutual fund sahi hai, right? Sort of a narrative change. And similarly, you need a narrative change that, look, it's okay to actually have wiser people on your payroll to help your organization do better things. But the case is a very value-driven case. I actually, in fact, initially when we started, some people suggested, look, this is a diversity inclusion situation, right? You should, and this is that question you had asked me, I think, before we started recording, on this intergenerational piece. So here's what's going on in the world, right? In the world, and of course, in a president of a country has actually changed the definition of a diversity and inclusion, but DEI started getting age diversity as a part of diversity and inclusion.
Okay.
What we have found out in talking to hundreds of people, if not thousands, is this segment does not want to be treated as a diverse segment. Right? They're saying, hire us for what we know and what we are good at. Don't tell me I'm a part of diversity quota because I'm old. So there is ageism, but let's not overly play out the ageism scenario and give us inclusion because of ageism. Right? So they say, so therefore our pitch to organizations is, here's the value that they add. So again, this is a Neeraj metric, which is the per unit cost of wisdom is lower as you get older. Right? And it's valuable, but what I'm saying is the actual cost for a company is lower. Because people are not driven by money only. They're driven by respect a lot more, relevance a lot more. So I think we are seeing the change happen. There are, like I said, we've actually already worked with more than 250 organizations. So we are actually quite positive that this is picking up. But what we are also finding, Swami, is the aspiration that we have doesn't exist, right? I mean, there's hardly any company in the world trying to attempt doing what we are doing at scale. There are companies who've tried, who basically said, look, again, the same logic, supply is there, but getting demand is difficult. So I tell people, our real job as Wisdom Circle is more from what we said earlier, which is a platform, everything, to we are evangelists to create jobs for this segment, to create meaningful work opportunities for this segment. So the conversation I have with everyone is, are there roles in your organization where you feel a problem can be solved by good people or good expertise and you need it now? That's the pitch. So that's what we are doing. We are, again, because now we are in different markets, we can actually do a lot of cross-border. In fact, The other learning is there are wisdom pockets in the world that need to get connected. So, for example, there's a pocket of engineers sitting in Germany. There's a pocket of mining folks sitting in Chile. There are people who are good at finance and commercial stuff, a lot more sitting in London and New York. So how do you connect wisdom pockets of expertise to countries, companies, spaces, functions that need the expertise? So we are thinking from equalizing the world kind of perspective, and it's now possible, right? This wasn't possible pre-COVID. Now remote work is possible. Payment across borders has become possible. Of course, you have to make sure labor laws are covered and you're doing the things the right way. But anyway, that's what we do.
Beautiful. So, which then brings me to the next aspect of longevity, which is really the way you learn, right? So, if I am a middle manager today, where I'm in my 30s and 40s, you are going to be somebody who should become an expert when you age, right? Therefore, your ability to learn becomes very important, and therefore the way you learn also probably needs to change, right? Because so how do you think people should approach it? Because that is becoming more critical. Because if I have to be relevant when I'm 50, I need to learn when I'm in my 30s and 40s, right? So, and I need the flexibility and adaptability to be ready in my 50s and the 60s to actually work. So what should I do in the interim decade, or say 2 decades, that I should how should I prepare myself to learn?
It's a very deep question, and I don't think I'm qualified to answer the question the right way, but let me tell you what I think. Okay, I think that the people who will adapt in this changing world are people who are inherently curious. And if you're the kind saying, tell me what to do, I'll do it, you have limited runway. Now, curiosity is very difficult to learn as you get older. So this is one of those things that has to start much sooner. So the advice I would give to my children, or rather my children of course don't listen to me, but to my friends' children would be what Tim Cook used to say, not Tim Cook, which Steve Jobs used to say, is be curious. There's something about curiosity, and curiosity is of two kinds, and this is what we learned at Egon, is there is curiosity of the outside world and there's curiosity about the self. And so therefore curiosity means a mix of both. You have to know who you are and what are you good at and what you like and what not like and what gives you joy, what is your flow, all of that scientific stuff. But you also have to be curious of how the world is changing. Now, can it be learned? Yes, of course it can be. But so the first thing is you have to find joy in being curious, because so that's one piece. The second piece, and this is a very close friend of mine who now runs a very large AI company that he started at the age of 57, used to tell me, and I, in fact, he's one of the smartest people I know. So one of the questions I would always ask him is, what should I be teaching my kids, right? Or what should my kids be learning so that they can adapt to this changing world? And he made a very profound statement to me, which has stuck. He said, teach the kids, what did he say? He says, they need to learn how to learn. That was his statement. Because in their lifetimes, they will have to unlearn and relearn many times. So that notion, and I think it links well with curiosity, this ability to continue learning and unlearning and learning again. Now, while that is on, I think you actually also talked about the expertise part. What we are finding in today's day and age is that the value of depth is way more than the value of general management. So in India, what happens at least is, or actually most part of the world, India especially, right? You ask anybody, what do they want? They want to be a manager, right? You want to be CEO. And right now we're seeing it on our platform. If you are damn good, like the other day we got a call, can you help us find a supercritical boiler expert? And we'll pay whatever we have to pay. And we're like, he says, yeah, because everybody's become general manager. Nobody knows the engineering and the science and the subject. So which is, by the way, a country level problem in many countries, whereas there's some countries like in Europe which are much more deeper in a subject. So I actually think, and my view therefore is, I'm not saying like, I look at myself and this the whole story I told you about going to business school and learning many things. I think that's the curiosity part, but you have to get deeper. And for me, the example is the 15 years of doing the same thing over and over again and getting good at it is what gives me the confidence today that I can handle anything in this subject area. But if tomorrow AI takes over this job, I'm like, okay, I got to learn something new and I have to get good at something else again. So that's my take on this subject.
Fantastic. Very nice, Neeraj. Which then takes me to the next pillar, which is really, so let me pull back a bit. So what we said was, I think the longevity of careers are increasing.
Yes.
Therefore, the way we work is changing. The way we learn, we have to change. And the way we earn is going to change, right? So therefore, how do you see the way we earn changing? Because, the fact that, lifelong employment, increments year after year, sustained jobs are there, changes that you are seeing. And therefore, if I were moving in my life, how should I approach the way I earn?
My Swami, you asked me very difficult questions. I wish there was some simple answer. There's no simple answer. Again, I'm going to take a stab at attempting it.
No, the reason I'm asking that, Neeraj, is you got about 100,000 people in your platform.
Yep.
Now, the way they look at how they want to earn is an indicator, okay, for me on how I need to prepare when I actually reach there, right? So because that's something that I think we all have to be ready for, which means that even at the age of say 30 or 40, my ability to look at flexi pay, my ability to look at gig work, my ability to look at expertise, all that needs a change, and that's the reason I'm asking that question.
It's a very good question. So maybe I'll answer this a little differently, and then please bear with me. The way I'm going to answer this question is, what does today's a happy 65-year-old, today's 7-day week look like? Okay. So again, what does a happy 65-year-old's 7-day week today look like? And it'll answer inherently the questions you've asked on today's situation, which is, it's a portfolio life, which means they do multiple things. So if you take the 7 days, the first 2 days are earning by doing things that you're really good at. So if I'm a very good marketing person, I work for 2 days a week with different companies, one company, multiple companies, to transfer my marketing skills to the benefit of value creation and then earning money. The money I earn in those 2 days is enough for me to sustain my week and not dip into my savings. So there is an element of savings, right? So which we'll also talk about. So that's my 2 days. The third day is a day of teaching. And you had asked this question on intergenerational connections. What we have found in research is the ability to stand up and teach, literally get up and teach younger people, is such an important part of, no matter what age you're at, of feeling very relevant. Now you may or may not get paid for it, but that's your third day. Your fourth day is a day of giving, where you work for a non-profit, social impact, or because again, in the research that we have done in these 100,000 people, is a lot of people want to. See, these are things, and when we've asked people, are you happy? And then we kind of understand their portfolio life, this is what we find. This is what 80% of, and there are always edge cases, but 80% of the people have this fourth day of social impact, right? So you got 4 days. The balance 3 days are a mix of learning, a mix of family and travel. Whatever, spiritual, whatever you put, those 3 days are your days of staying relevant. Now, this is the broader context of a happy 65-year-old today. So, portfolio life, earning and giving, teaching and learning and spending time with family. Now, you start working backwards. When you are 55, so in a way you're playing around with this, right? So, your teaching may be on the weekend, your giving may be on the weekend, and it may be 4 days of working or 5 days of working. But that starts shrinking, right? But the underlying thing of this is you still need to save money. Now let's work backwards on the bigger question you asked. Earn. I think my advice and what I've learned of all people who are happy as they get older have a much better handle on their own finances. Right? So this whole notion that we see, and I see this in younger people today, is let me spend what I earn. Like even in my team, I have people, okay, I don't want to save for my retirement yet, but we'll. So a lot of us push out the future part, and I think if you want to have a better life in the future, you have to save more sooner. And you have to work, as Morgan Housel says in his book, you have to let compounding work for you. Because if you don't do it early on, so that's one piece. The second piece is health insurance. I think a lot of people miss, it's a small, we think, health insurance, we'll see, right now I don't have any problem. Health insurance, life insurance, these costs go up as you get older. I tell people, a lot of people who are even retiring, I said, if there's one thing that will drain your finances, no matter how much you have saved, is not having enough health insurance and getting stuck with a health problem. So to come back to your question on earning, I think opportunities to earn will increase. Commitment of organizations to individuals is already reducing. You have to take care of yourself. If you take care of yourself, the money you earn, make sure you don't spend it all and save it. Make sure compounding works for you sooner than later. And now the question on learning, which I think something I missed, it all goes in tandem, right? So you're learning, earning, unlearning, learning, earning. So also and you have to be prepared for it mentally. This whole notion that, I did this and I'm going to be dependent for the rest of my life on something I did, it's not going to work.
So the fact that be ready for volatility, be ready for change, be ready to have a portfolio life. I think you have really
Correct.
put it very well. I think
and have the money to last, right? Because so I was talking to somebody just yesterday, and he was leaving at 55, and he asked me, okay, I'm thinking of having this portfolio. He didn't phrase portfolio life, but that's what he was saying he wanted to do. He wanted to be a coach, he wanted to be a mentor, he wanted to help startups. I just asked him one question. I said, if you don't make money, how long do you think you will last? He's like, 8 months. I said, look, you have bigger problems to worry about. Make sure you get back into a full-time job or whatever and save the money for you to do other things. Because by the way, the portfolio life does not pay as much as a full-time job does. And therefore, unless you're really good at something where people say, look, I want this and I'll pay whatever, and now in this world of AI, so I'm saying there's lots of these complexities coming, but the more important part is you in your own head should know what is coming. So the first thing, and Swami, you said it very well, you need to know what is coming and therefore be prepared for it.
Very nice. And when you look at some of these experts, which I think you have a unique blend of having run an executive search firm, and now you're looking at Wisdom Circle. When you look at these experts, and when you really dissect them as experts, where companies say, I need that boiler expert kind of a point that you made, right? So what do you see of them, and when you actually talk to them, what is it that they have acquired over their 15, 20, 30 year work experience that makes a difference at this stage, which means that I need to prepare all of that in the last 20 years, right? Which is very, very important.
Correct. It's a good question. So I'll tell you what I see in good experts. Good experts, no matter what their age, are still learning about the same thing that they've learned. They don't stop learning. They're still reading the journals. They're still reading they're in touch with what is going on. And right now, I'll tell you, we're building a semiconductor vertical, and I'm learning a lot about semiconductor expertise, and I'll share that with you if that makes sense, because that's what India needs. But what we are finding is they're passionate, or they found an area which energizes them. So, and that has taken time, right? And like I was telling you, the first few years you don't, finally you do find what you're good at, right? And you say, look, I'm good at this and I'll continue doing it. So the continuous learning piece is a big piece. But at the same time, also knowing, so good experts know what not to do. Because we always talk about good experts know what to do. AI will tell you what to do. Good experts know what not to do. Right? And all good experts know shortcuts. Good experts know who to call when you need help. Good experts are not compliance. They're the sort of, if in finance terms you would say, okay, good experts who follow the rule, are compliant. But traditional good experts, like a good expert in a boiler, a good expert is, it's the wisdom of experience that says, it's not written anywhere, but if you do this, these are the 5 things that can go wrong. But if you don't do this, these are the 10 things that can go wrong. And so to me, and it's people who find joy in that. And again, I don't claim to be a headhunting expert, but I spend way less time than most of my colleagues have. Only 15 years versus people who've done this 20, 30 years. But there are things you can pick up when you talk to an individual, which that there's something wrong here, or there's something, it's like when you say, no, my gut says this. Good experts have a gut that has a title written on it, semiconductor gut, or a podcaster gut. You've done so many podcasts, you kind of know what is going to work in this podcast, what not, because you've done it so many times.
Yeah, fantastic. I think beautiful. I think the way you defined an expert was very interesting. Staying relevant, doing it with on a repeatable basis, on a daily basis, being energized by it. I think it's a lovely definition of an expert. I'm kind of coming to my last set of rapid fire questions. And so the first question I want to ask you, Neeraj, is what does success mean to you?
It's changed over time, Swami. I think success early on always meant financial stability, the ability to do what I wanted. It had a lot to do with money initially, and stature, titles, how people look at you, etc. And for some reason, I think, once, and most of us, I don't know, but once you cross 50 and you kind of realize that mortality, has a definition, and there's only so much. I think success, for me, in fact, I don't even use the word success anymore. I say, what gives you joy? What gives you happiness? I think a lot has to be with, for me, it has to do with impact. I know it sounds too this thing, but and I've seen a lot of people, right? I've seen so many happy people doing non-profit work. I've seen so many happy people, teaching. I've seen so many happy people giving. And I used to always think, what's wrong with them? How can they be happy doing this? But then as you get older, you realize, there's only so much. Like at the end, Taisadam you have to have, there's only so much you can eat, right? What will you have? Fancy food. Oh, been there, done that. Now today, if you have fancy food, you have to go, sit in the toilet for longer, right? So, at the end, your body balances out your needs versus wants.
So the impact, and I think that's the important point that you're making, right?
And in my case, it is impact on people much more, and therefore impacting organizations through people, impacting people because they are what they are. I think for me that is, again, it's not success, it's what gives me joy. Success, I think at least personally, I think for me, okay, I do have a success would be that my children turn out better than me. That's it. I think that's sort of and better than me in anything and everything. To me, that would be a good measure. And again, I look at it because I remember my dad, before he passed away in December, Was always happy. Didn't have much money, but he was always happy. My kids are doing well. Right? And I think you kind of, at that, you don't understand this when you are younger, but you understand it as you get older.
Nice. What would be your advice to a 18-year-old in a university today?
So one of my sons is that, and he doesn't listen to my advice. So I'm like putting him in my mind, saying, what will I tell him? He'll be like, I know, Dad, don't, I know AI, I know Chat GPT. I'll ask them the question. Honestly, I don't know, Swami. What I can do is, maybe if I was 18, what would I do? Maybe that's the way I can answer that question.
Please do what you're comfortable with and what you are able to say with conviction. That to me is more important.
So if I was 18 and I had to look at the future, I would actually do a lot more hands-on work to get ready for what is going to come in the future. I would go, intern in a mechanic shop. I would go, work at McDonald's. I would, I would mow lawns. I would do things. I would be a gardener. I would go work in a printing press to see how, books get printed. I would do things a lot more hands-on because, again, in a way, there's a thematic thing here. I would expose myself to a lot more things because for someone who's 18, they've got at least another 82 years to go. So you might as well, experience things that are going to get outdated, because then you can look back and say, I at least knew how a book used to be printed. But I think you will also then be able to navigate the future much better, because you can look back on the past and your experiences in the past and not rely only on technology to tell you everything. So I think that's the only advice I would have.
Great. If you were to invite a couple of people for a dream lunch, who would you invite and why? And they can be living or dead.
So I would invite the founder of Egon Zehnder. He actually recently passed away, and his assistant. And I've been fortunate enough to know both of them a little bit, at least as a listener. But they are so the assistant was, so Egon Zehnder's assistant was his assistant for life. She joined and literally 50 years she was an assistant. And you had Egon Zehnder, who built this company in 1964, died at the age of 90 to 93, and built a company that I'm so proud to have been associated with. And to me, the dream lunch would be about what kept you going, right? Both became experts in their area, and in very different, right? One as an assistant, one as the founder. And both had harmony in how they worked and liked each other and did everything. And I think it's so the two, and understand from them what, and I wish I can even get a little bit more of that to do, because I keep telling that Wisdom Circle, I'm on a mission. And there are days when you always think about, am I doing the right thing? And you question. But there are people who just keep going, and in spite of the ups and downs. And I'm human. Downs make me feel down, right? And I'm just thinking, how do you convert the downs into thinking positive? So that's what I would do. I haven't thought about this, but I think that's what immediately comes to mind.
Beautiful. What's one piece of advice? I'm sure you would have got a lot of advice, but what's one piece of advice that's remained with you, which you continue to cherish even today?
I think so. One, this is around authenticity. Right? I think there was me and a friend of mine were doing some research on authenticity and what does it mean? Because we would always talk about you have to be authentic. And I think a piece of advice that stayed with me was something that both of us sort of came up with together, which was, you are who you are when no one is looking. And I think just staying true to that, again, I am not that, I'm not perfect, but that's the one that is sort of the lamp post that we work towards, that look, that's what you need to be, because, and I think, age in a way does that to you. As we get older, we actually don't care about what others think.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, lovely.
So maybe it ties in with this whole longevity piece, And as people get older, they care a hoots about what others think.
What's one thing that you believe in that others don't agree with you on?
What's one thing that I believe in that others don't agree on? Maybe I'm answering this as a thing, but I have a lot of beliefs, and I actually don't care what others think about it. So I don't think there's anything. I never thought of it that way. I've just said this is my belief, and whether others believe it or not, that's their problem. So for example, this question around free will, and you can all get into these philosophical questions. My views, your views are your views. As long as you're happy with them, just don't worry about what others think about it. I think it's my answer. It's a good question. I think maybe I've diverted the answer, given you a goom perage answer, but
I love the word that you said, which is don't worry about what others think.
And by the way, I was not like this, right? Swami, I think, growing up in middle class India, pursuing a career, pursuing dreams, pursuing this thing, you always think about what others think, because you get judged by others, you get evaluated by others. I think finally, and maybe it is, and you've been through this journey, the moment you're doing something on your own, you actually can be yourself a lot more. Because you don't have anyone judging you or evaluating. And if people are, they are. Right? Because at the end, you are doing what you think is right. I wish I was this sooner, but then I was thinking if I was this sooner, then, I probably would have got fired. I probably would have. So there are these cultural norms and social norms you have to, you have to be evaluated. So you have to do what your boss wants. You have to do. And maybe, I think you touched on something which in the future, maybe what it will mean is that we will all be much more self-aware sooner, which will create a lot more disharmony in the world, but at least we will all be authentic.
Beautiful. Nice way of putting it. So on that note of authenticity, don't worry about what others think, and your definition of success and harmony at work. It was a lovely conversation, extremely engaging, and the depth of experience and the way you put it out there was very, very good. And thanks a lot, Neeraj, for talking to us today. And there's a lot to take. I'm sure the audience are going to find a lot of takeaways in this conversation. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure, Swami, and thank you for having me, and thank you for making me think. Right? It's again, and maybe this is one of those things as we get older, right? Like right now, a lot of people don't make me think as much. I think you made me think a lot today. So I think I now need to go drink some chai and sort of get back into routine.